My best clients over the years have doubled and tripled their annual sales because they said, okay, we're going to do it your way. And then a year later, they said, you know what, you're right. And then have other clients say, we don't want to invest that kind of money. We don't have that kind of time. And guess what? Many of them are out of business today.
Things are available easier. Some things are good that you don't have to fight for it, right? You can get few things figured out. But I think from an aspect of when life hits you and you have a choice to make whether you fight or fly, a lot of people are flying.
It's a health issue, whether it's a financial issue. Stop blaming the world. Start looking and taking responsibility for where you are. I don't know whether I'm going to die a millionaire or broke, but either way, I'm going to take the credit.
Hi, welcome to Ashish Janiani. It's a privilege to have you join the show today, and I am very positive you'll get a lot of insights that you will be able to implement in your work and sales life. If you are an entrepreneur, a sales professional, a business in any capacity, you're on the right channel and you'll be listening to the right people. There's nothing better than that, right? If you think about it from a perspective of gaining knowledge, imagine 30 years, 20 years, 35 years of experience with the man that I have today. 35 years of experience. He's spoken in 27 countries. His one of his books, he's written 80 books, but his book Soft Sell has been translated into, if I've got it right, 25 languages, and it sold more than 1 crore copies. That's the man that's joining us today. Maybe there's that one tip in this whole video that can change your sales game and take it to the next level. So help me welcome Tim Connor for this amazing interview. Hey Tim, how are you?
I am still alive. How are you?
Well, same here. Doing good. So there we go. Just kind of want to get started with this whole interview. I'm very excited. I don't know how you've done it, but you've written, I think now 80 books. Is that correct?
Yeah, my 81st one is coming out in a couple of months.
Wow. All right. So why don't we start over there? How did you come up, with 80 books plus the one that is coming up in 2 months? Can you take me back to that journey with the first book?
Yeah, I only write things where I've had personal experience. So my first couple of books were sales books where I was in the insurance industry and they didn't really know how to teach how to sell. So I had to teach myself. And after 2 years, I decided maybe there's a lot of other people out there. So I wrote my first sales book. My last book that came out a couple of years ago, short story, I had hip surgery. They tried to kill me. So I had an open heart surgery a week later. I was in rehabilitation for a month and all these people were running around in wheelchairs, just can't wait to go home and die. And I met one guy in the room who was 86 years old, Fred, I'll never forget him. He says, I got to get out of here. I said, Fred, what's your hurry? You're 86 years old. He said, I got places to go and things to do and people to see. So I took my favorite hero, Mark Twain's, one of his favorite quotes was, my age is none of my business. So I decided at my age, it was time to write that. And that came out 2 years ago. So basically everything I write, my father died 10 years ago, and driving home from the funeral, I wrote a book called The Last Goodbye, saying yes to life after the loss of a loved one. The one just before my last one was called Blah, 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 Don't Tell Me, Show Me. Communication today is worthless. People say things they don't mean for a variety of reasons. So I decided real relationships are about the integrity of what you do, not what you say. So I decided to write. So it's basically everything I do is something I have personal experience with.
We are not just talking about Tim Connor writing sales books, right? It's not just about soft sell. It's about a lot of other aspects of life that I hear you talk about. Uh, if you were speaking to somebody like me, right? Most people who will watch this would be in the middle of their career, Tim. They've got some experience, they're doing things. What are some advices? Let's talk about life first, and then I'll come to sales because I think there's more to you now that I'm listening to you. What would you like to say, to people like us who are building our careers in this disruptive world today?
Well, I think I have a list of long, what I call life mantras. And what those mantras are principles that have sort of, the list has gotten bigger over the years, but the list basically has become sort of the guidelines or the template for how I live each day. And one of my favorites is, I was not put on this earth for your approval. Now, I've spoken in 27 countries, over 1 million people, and every time I'm in front of 100 or 1,000 people, I know there's going to be somebody in that room that doesn't like me, the way I'm dressed, the way I talk. And if we keep pandering to everybody to try to get everyone's approval, spouses, children, customers, sooner or later we're going to lose our own value of who we are. So I guess the best advice I could give my kids and my grandkids was, keep learning, keep growing, and don't let other people control your destiny. If there's something wrong in your life, you don't fix it by looking outside. You fix it by looking in the mirror, whether it's a health issue, whether it's a financial issue. Stop blaming the world. Start looking and taking responsibility for where you are. I don't know whether I'm going to die a millionaire or broke, but either way, I'm going to take the credit.
All right, I like that. I like that. Okay, good. I'm going to take the credit for that. So, Tim, let me break this down for somebody listening to you right now. What you said is deep, but let's take an example of that. There's somebody out there who knows that I'm not here for everybody's approval, right? We hear this. Uh, but when it happens, when there's a moment when you're working a job, you're giving a speech, or you're with a family, you're at a party, you have a get together, and you're speaking to people, it's practically just happening right now in the moment. Somehow people switch back, and subconsciously they are still looking for that approval. How do you really live what you are saying, because you've lived it? How can somebody work on that path?
Well, I could give you two quick examples. One was, I tell every audience, wherever I am in the world, I would like you to like me, but I don't care. And 95% of my speaking engagements and training engagements my entire career have been repeat business. I'll tell you a short story. 2 years ago, a client they were in an association. They had 300 members at this 3-day convention. The president wanted me to do three 2-hour presentations every day. So at the end of the first 2-hour presentation on the first day, he said, "These people don't like you. They think you're being disrespectful." I said, "Nick, I told you that's my style. I don't pander. I tell it like it is." He said, "Well, I just want to let you know." At the end of the second day, the 2-hour presentation, he said, "Well, these people still don't like you, but they realize you're not being disrespectful." I said, "Nick, I told you." At the end of the third 2-hour presentation, the third day, he said, "These people want you back next year. What are you doing July 18th and 19th? The point is that I would like you to like me, but if I have to lose me to get that, that's not worth it. The second example I would give you would be my last full-time job before going speaking full-time. I was working for an association. I had 3 children, and there was about 20 employees. I was in charge of the sales department. And the executive director came back from a national board meeting and told the staff, "Well, nobody's going to get a raise this year." And so I went into his office later and I said, "Why are we not going to get a raise?" He said, "Well, because I couldn't convince the board that I deserved a raise." So I said, "Let me see if I understand this. I'm not going to get a raise. It has nothing with my talent or my ability or effort. It's basically based on how good you are." He said, "Well, that's pretty much it." I said, "You'll have my resignation at the end of the day. I got 3 kids, I got debt, but I can't let other people take me in a direction that is not worth going." So I'm not saying I don't have the right to tell other people how to live. I don't have the right to tell other business owners. I've never run $100 million company. I don't have the right to tell you how to do that. All I can do is take life's lessons and package them. And if they work for you, great. And if they don't, leave the room. That's pretty simple.
Wow. And is that by choice that you chose the path not to make a business $100 million, because other things in life are important and it has some sacrifices? Or do you think that's part of the learning that you're still exploring?
I'm not in the business for the money. I'm in the business. There's an old Native American legend that says that you're only going to get into heaven leaning on the shoulders of one person that you helped during your life. So I'm thinking, okay, if I've helped 10 people, I got a better shot at it. If I've helped 1,000 people, hey, wait a minute, if I've helped 1 million people, I'm in. So I don't do it. I mean, I get paid to speak around the world. I still get paid. I'm probably maybe in the middle range of fees for most of the people in this profession. But I do not let my fee get in the way of doing business with a client where I feel I can have a positive impact on the organization or its culture. Again, I don't negotiate based purely on their desire to negotiate, but if I can be of service, when we all leave here, we're going to leave a legacy behind. And do you want your legacy to be how much money you made or how many people you helped?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Wow. All right. I like the way you put it. Tim has again. I just again want to focus on life before sales. Usually it's practice that makes a man think the way you do, which is wise, or it's something that has happened in life. Okay, something emotional that happened at some point in life that changed the person. uh, is there a moment in your life when you had that trigger to live a life the way you are living it today, when that path started, or it was just practice and you just kind of figured it out on the way?
I was 14 years old and I went to a state to work, spend the summer working as a pot washer. And they took out $20 a week out of our pay. And then at the end of the season, you had to stay 2 weeks to shut down the resort. If you didn't stay, you lost that money that they held back. My parents moved to a different state while I was gone, and I wanted to try out for the football team. So I called my father and said, "Hey, Dad, what should I do?" They taught us from the time we were 10 years old, you make your own decisions, but you get your own consequences. I said, if I leave, I'm going to lose the money. If I don't leave, I'll get the money, but I won't make the team. What should I do? He said, it's your call. I said, come and get me. The next year, I got old enough to get a driver's license. When I was about $200 short to get to buy a car, there was a great little car. I said, Dad, could you loan me a couple $100 so I can buy the car? He said no. I said, well, hey, I said, if I'd have stayed up there, I would have had the money. He said, that was your choice. Everything we have in life, directly or indirectly, is a result of consequences. And I learned that at age 14 in my first job. But you know what? If you don't like the consequences, look at the choices. If you want to change the consequences, change the choices. So over the course of life, yes, I've made a lot of stupid decisions and done a lot of dumb things, but I have to point the finger at me. I can't point the finger at anybody else. And I think that's part of the problem today in society around the world. I've spoken in Greece half a dozen times. I've spoken in Ireland twice. I Kuala Lumpur 4 times. I see people. It has nothing to do with your cultural background. It's called life, and we all have the same challenges, the same issues, the same opportunities. It's how we look at them that really matters, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think mental toughness has kind of gone a little down in people because things are available easier. Some things are good that you don't have to fight for it, right? You can get few things figured out. But I think from a aspect of when life hits you, and you have a choice to make whether you fight or fly, a lot of people are flying because they don't have the training that your dad gave you. And I mean, that's why a good parent is really important in life, right? So
Oh,
different. Yeah.
it's one of my favorite lines. There's no such thing as bad kids. There's not just stupid parents.
Yeah, so I've got a lot of cursing, hearing that from Dan Pina. Very different. I agree with you on what you said. Okay, so now let's come to sales. Uh, let's start with who is a salesperson. If you had to define, a lot of people call themselves salespeople. All of them are, but what's a good, genuine salesperson?
Well, I'll ask you a question. Do doctors sell? Do politicians sell? Does the media sell? Do church or parish leaders sell? Selling is about influence and persuasion. The sales profession calls it selling, and I sell a product or a service to my customers or my market. But parents, if you're doing a good job as a salesperson, as a parent, you raise good kids. If you're doing a bad job as a parent selling, you're going to end up with bad kids. Same thing, if you're doing a bad job selling as a president of a company, you're going to have lousy employees. So my perception for my entire career is selling is not about selling stuff. It's about influence or persuasion. It's about getting people to buy your ideas. It's getting people to like you. It's getting people to not like. It's about how you present yourself to the world, regardless of your profession. Yes, there is a sales profession, and that profession does sell things, but there's still, and I've been teaching this my whole life, I will tell you, if you do not do a good job of influence and persuasion, I don't care if you're selling computers or real estate or whatever, you're not going to get the business. Or if you don't do a good job continuing to sell it, you will lose the business. So selling for me is a much broader perspective about
Hmm.
influence.
All right. How do you build influence?
Well, there's 3 or 4 major factors. The first one is trust. If people don't trust you, they've been saying for years in the sales profession, people, you want to get people to like you. I will tell you, if you call almost every one of my clients, none of them like me. They do not want to go to lunch with me. They do not want to spend the weekend with me. But when they want positive things in their business and their life, they call me because they know I'm not going to pander or give in or cave just in order to keep the business or the reputation. My see in life, if you're overweight, you're not going to lose weight unless something changes inside of you. If you're broke, and I've been there, okay, I've been in all these bad places. If you're broke, what happens is you have to create a discomfort. And until you have that discomfort inside of you, you're not going to make different or better decisions. So from my perspective, the role of responsibility in sales is you have to, in a respectful way, but you have to create discomfort in the mind of the customer or the prospect to get them to realize that they could have something better if they bought your product or bought your service or left the current vendor and went somewhere else. So sometimes when you create that discomfort, you make people feel uncomfortable, and then they do not want to buy from you because they don't like you. I will tell you, if from my perspective in sales, it's not about getting people to like you. It comes back to trust. The second one is integrity in communication. In other words, don't be saying things just to get the business. In other words, say things that you are true. And if you don't know if they're true, then don't say them until you know that they're true. I talk about perception a lot in my messages. And when you look at it, I ask every audience a variety of questions to prove. For example, I asked you, a young woman walked in the room, what would you write down as her age? If I said your neighbor just bought an expensive car, what do they pay for the car? If I asked 100 people, I'm going to get 100 different answers. So the bottom line is every message I have as a salesperson is going to be interpreted differently or uniquely by that person I'm sending it to. I have to understand how they're interpreting that message so I can adjust it in an ethical and legal way to make sure that I create that influence. So trust is a factor, communication is a factor, and I believe passion. If you do not believe in what you're doing, if you're just doing it to make money, if you don't have a tremendous passion for your product or your service or what it does for your customer, get a different job, man. Get out of the profession.
Yes, wow. All right. So when you say that you should make your customer a little discomfortable because they need something, and you can provide that, and you believe in that, uh, can I put it like this, that if you're honest, right, if you're really honest with your profession and you're honest with your customer, it's the best way to gain their respect and still make them give them that discomfort so that you can do business together. Would honesty be the right word?
Yes, but then there's lots of people who are not ready for honesty. They are not ready for discomfort, and they'll come up with excuses or rationales not to do something. They'll say, well, I'm happy with my current customer. I don't really need to do this right now. So the bottom line is that the degree of discomfort can also create a discomfort in the relationship where people do not want to do business with you. And so this is where a lot of people in sales say, wait a minute, do I draw the line because I got to get the business, and do I sort of change my message a little bit to see that's where the integrity issue comes in. As long as you have integrity with the benefits and the factor, everybody's going to use a product differently and have a different experience with a product and service. You can't control that, but what you can control is the message you use to have them purchase that product. And if that message gets adjusted in an unethical way just to get the business, you're in the wrong profession.
Yeah, I think that's where would you say prospecting is really important in terms of having a pipeline full? Because if you know that you've got 20 more people to speak to in this week, then you're not really worried about being honest.
Yeah, that's why I started speaking. In the insurance business, if I really worked hard, I could see 3 or 4 people a day. I'm thinking that I can't be as successful as I want to be, see 15 people a week. I need to see more. So I was 25 years old and I developed a speech on success. I'd never been successful, but I developed this 30-minute speech and I started giving it to organizations around the country. So on an average week, I wrote lunch meeting here, dinner meeting there, breakfast meeting, and it was the same speech for 10 years. So I gave over 1,000 free speeches over the course of this 10-year period to Lions clubs, Rotary clubs, Kiwanis clubs, and business organizations. But on average, I was in front of 500 people a week. I wasn't selling insurance, but I was getting 2 things: exposure and credibility. And that's what that exposure could do. So that exposure put me in front of a couple thousand people a month. So my insurance business went crazy simply because I wasn't selling the success. I wasn't selling insurance in front of this audience. I was just trying to get credibility and exposure. And that's just one. And I tell everybody in sales, you need to learn to develop that approach to get multiple exposure in your industry. You can do it with writing, you can do it with articles. There's lots of ways to get that exposure. But if you're relying only on traditional sales practices, cold calling, referrals, if you're only relying on those, you will not get enough business down the road, especially in changing and negative times to stay in business or in the profession.
Wow, wow. That's I can imagine you actually going out there hustling to get exposure, and you need to do that on social media today, as you said. That got me thinking about one question while you were speaking with the changes that have happened in the market really fast in the last 2.5 decades. What, according to you, is the importance of a telephone still when you're making sales, right? Some people say you don't need it, and others have a different opinion.
Technology is trying to teach us and persuade us that selling is about the product, that selling is about technology. So you just send them an email, you send them a text, you go online to their website. And I am fighting this with tooth and nail. I tell all my clients, use technology as a tool, not a crutch. When in doubt, if you want to sell something, pick up the phone and call them and create an appointment. If it's across the country, I've traveled 3,000 miles up to have an appointment whether I didn't know whether I was going to sell them or not, and I paid for that to do that. Obviously, I have to know a lot about that prospect to know whether it's worth that time and that effort and money. But the bottom line is, I tell people, number one, stop relying on technology. Stop. Technology wants you to become dependent on it because that's why and how they're making a lot of money. I am not on Facebook. I do not do Twitter, and I'm not saying that I'm against these things, but I'm saying what's happening is people are relying too heavily on this, and they're letting the relationship piece out of the sales process. And I will tell you this, and I still believe this today as I did 40 years ago. Selling is about the integrity and the quality of relationship. I don't care if it's a car. I don't care what the product is you're buying or what it is. The bottom line is this: if you do not have a relationship, sooner or later people will do business with someone else. Almost 95% of my business over my entire career has been repeat business or referral business. And that's simply because I look at the business not as getting the next speech or the next engagement. I look at it as getting the next client. I could give you an example. One industry I was in 15 years ago, they led me to another major company. That presentation led me. I've done over $250,000 just indirectly because of that presentation that led to other down the road presentations. And that would have never happened if I would have relied on technology. Yes, technology is more important today than it was 10 or 15 years ago. Yes, the telephone, I tried something a couple of months ago. I just went back to cold calling. I called 100 people on the phone in a month. I got connected with 4 of them, and I only talked with 1 of them. So yes, that's not the best way to do it. Use that technology to create the potential for the relationship. But if you're relying on that to both make the presentation and close the deal and create relationships ongoing, I think it's a mistake, and I think we're headed in the wrong direction because of technology in that element.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of influencers out there, Tim, who don't have money from a sales perspective. So they've got an audience, but they're broke because they don't know how to sell.
That's
Uh,
right.
and that's pretty sad. And then we know other people, right, who are not very active on social media, but they've got the money,
Okay,
right?
I didn't have the money, and I had social media. I had 5,000 friends. I used to do an email newsletter. I did it for 15 years. I had 250,000 subscribers around the world. Every week I would send out an article. I didn't promote anything. It was just a new article every week. I didn't charge them for this. And then I have a new book come out, and so once or maybe twice a year I do a promotion piece to these 250,000 people who are getting these free articles every week. I will tell you, in 10 years, I sold 2 books and 1 CD of $100 worth of revenue from 250,000 people. I decided, you know what? I shut the newsletter down. I'm wasting my time. I'm giving all these people free stuff. And then once every 5 years, they will not spend $15 or $20 and buy one of my books. Why are they reading my articles if they don't want to read one of my books? I did the same thing with Facebook. I had 5,000 friends. I didn't know who any of those people were. I would put some things on there. Nothing would happen. What it's giving us is a false sense of maybe fame, a false sense of stability. We've got all these relationships. Trust me, uh, I will tell you, when it comes down to it, there's very few people in life that you can lean on in serious troubles or times. And it's not going to be most of your Facebook friends, your LinkedIn friends, or those people. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm not saying you shouldn't have them. But if you rely too heavily on them, you're going to be led down the wrong path.
Yeah, I think yeah, you use them as tools, as you said, they're enablers, but they're never gonna they will never be able to replace the relationship part of the deal, because we are humans. Yeah, eventually if robots take us over, then it's a different thing. But till the time we've got a heart, we got to have relationships. I agree with you on that part of it. So Tim, how do I build a relationship if I'm an entrepreneur? The audience, when they watch this video, when it's live, how do I go about building that relationship given the times now? So we have these virtual things which are going because of COVID. How do I go about building a relationship? What's the process?
I will tell you, if the virtual stuff doesn't end soon, there's going to be more businesses go out of business, because people, if we do not get children back in schools, we're going to have the dumbest generation in the history of the human race. People do not learn by looking at a screen. They learn by interaction. They learn by questioning. They learn by challenges. And that is not, I've done 2 virtual meetings, and I'm doing one next week for 3 hours. Trust me, how much do you think these people are going to get out of a 3-hour time looking at a screen? It's not going to happen. I think what we have to do is I have to find a way to connect with people. For example, I had every one of my engagements in 2020 has been rescheduled to 2021. And so far, half of them are saying we're not sure we're even going to do in 2021. So I have a choice. Do I do virtual training, which I do not? It's okay for a meeting. We're doing this, we're doing that. But from an educational perspective, virtual meetings, I wanted to be a neurosurgeon when I was in high school and college. I've been studying brain function my whole life. Every year I read 3 or 4 new books on brain physiology and brain function. And the reason I do that is because I want to understand the relationship between how our brain works and how we learn, and then how we use what we learn. And I will tell you, if we don't get out of this virtual content, and if too many people decide to default back to that going forward as the normal routine, you're going to see a lot of really dumb people and a lot of poor performance, because they talk about remote training and how do we supervise people remotely? You don't. If they do not have the inner desire or the inner passion or the inner integrity, you cannot manage people remotely. You can fire them, you can give them a raise, but the bottom line is this: you have to find a way to blend, which is, what we're doing. Okay, I've spoken in 27 countries, but I've never spoken in India. I've never spoken in Russia,
Wow.
but I've spoken in a lot of countries around your countries. I would love to go to countries that I haven't been to yet. How do I get to do that? Well, first of all, I don't want to go there if the COVID thing is a disaster. So what do? I start building a relationship. We're talking. I've never met you before. You never met me before, but we've started a relationship. I don't know where this relationship will go, but it's up to both of us to nurture it. So when there is an appropriate time for us to get together in some other way, we take advantage of that, or we don't. So you have to start building relationships, knowing that at some point we will get back to normalcy, because if we don't, my personal opinion is as a human race, we're in serious trouble.
Oh yeah, yeah. We are in a serious trouble. And the way I explained this to one of my clients was, we've got 5 senses, right? So you've got the smell, the touch, the taste, the hear, the see, and the feel part of it. What virtual doesn't have is the feel part of it. So the see part of it is there, but till the time you're there, there's something about being with somebody physically out there. Like, imagine, even if you and I were doing this interview together in one room, there's that energy that is created. And when you're talking about kids whose brains are developing, and from a neuroscience perspective, if they don't feel it, their brains will not fully develop, right? And that's
But
insane.
if you were having this meeting in a room and we were both there, you'd probably throw me out of the room anyway in about 15, 20 minutes. So it's okay. It's not a problem. But no, seriously, what I developed 25 years ago, a learning process that I share with my clients. I'll share it with you quickly. There's what we call the awareness level. So I want my people to be aware of closing sales or prospecting. So I can teach them that in maybe 2 hours, but they're not going to do anything with it. They just have an awareness of it. What do you want? I want them to use it. Okay. Then there's what I call the understanding level. To get them to the understanding level, I need 6 hours on the same closing topic. So now at the end of 6 hours, they have an awareness of closing and an understanding of it. I don't want them just to understand it. I want them to use it. Okay. Then there's what I call the integration level. If you want them to use it, I need 10 hours on this topic, not 2, not 4, 10 hours. Okay. I want them to be the best. Okay. Then there's what I call the mastery level. Well, I need 2 days. So here we got closing, we got prospecting, so there's so many topics. And so you're telling me to get them masters of sales and all these topics, we're talking about dozens and hundreds of hours. I guess yes, because it's not just about what we teach them, it's how you inspect it, it's how you coach it, it's how you follow up with it, how you integrate it. It's not just the learning process, it's what goes forward that's a part of that learning process. You don't put people in a room for 2 hours, they're 30 or 40 years old, who spent 30 or 40 years developing mindsets that are what they are, and then you put them in a room for 2 hours and expect them to leave that room with new mindsets. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Sorry. So if you
It's
want
all
to
right.
be better salespeople or better managers, you need to follow a process, and that process involves certain elements. Trust me, I've been in one. I've had clients who, hey, you got an hour. I want my people to leave the room, the best salespeople in our industry. I tell clients it's not going to happen. Well, why not? Here's why. Because the average retention of a new idea is less than 2 weeks. So after 2 weeks, they're not going to remember who I was, what I talked about. You want to have some impact? Give me the day, and I'll limit the number of topics, and then you'll have some impact. My best clients over the years have doubled and tripled their annual sales because they said, okay, we're going to do it your way. And then a year later, they said, you know what, you're right. And then have other clients said, we don't want to invest that kind of money. We don't have that kind of time. And guess what? Many of them are out of business today.
Wow. I agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah. We divide the coaching program into a quarter or of 2 quarters because development is slow. Yeah. You can't change a human in 2 hours. It's never going to happen. All right. So why don't we leave the audience who's going to watch this with 3 sales tips? I mean, there's so much, but let me not even say 3, as many as you want to give. But they're going to be a value tips that people can use today from all the books that you've written. Which one should they pick up? What tips can you give them today?
First thing would be shut up. Stop talking. Ask more questions. If you're not asking, you're not learning. Stop making the sale about the product or the service, but about the customer, their needs, concerns, fears, desires, wants. And the only way you find that out is to ask more questions. I have over 150 questions that I ask when I'm dealing with a client. I was on the phone the other day with a client for an hour and a half. At the end of the hour and a half, he says, "You're hired." I said, "Why?" He says, "Because he says, I know nothing about you, but you know more about my business than most of my employees." Ask more questions, ask relevant questions, ask important questions, ask questions that get to the integrity, the intent, the timing. Number 2, use a process. I don't care whether you're making spaghetti, building a bridge, or doing heart surgery. Everything to have a successful outcome, you need a successful process. If one day you say this and the next day you say that and the next day you ask this, you're not following the process. You're just wandering all around. Develop a sales process. This is one of the things I did early in my career. I said, okay, what is my process? It's before I give a presentation, I have to know what their needs, concerns, wants, and desires are, problems are. If it takes 2 hours of questioning, I'm not going to go into the presentation until I know what the issue is. So develop a process. Use your clients, use your customers to teach you. One of the biggest problems today in the marketplace around the world is relevance. Companies are going out of business in the restaurant industry when there are restaurants right next door that are still in business. You get Blockbuster, who sold DVDs, goes out of business, but Netflix is still in business. So the products aren't going away. It's the way these people marketed them or sold them that have gone away. I don't care. All over the world, I've seen closed stores, and then down the street, a store that's still open in the same industry. It's because they lost relevance in the marketplace. So as a salesperson, you need to stay relevant. Trust me, I am not a fan of virtual meetings, but I'm doing them because I know I have to stay relevant in a way that the market wants. So the client says, hey, we're not going to do our annual conference this year, but everybody wants you back. Will you do 3 hours of virtual stuff? I said, yes, on one condition, that you make a commitment to hire me next year or the year after for a live session. He said, you're on. So I'm doing the virtual program, but he committed, because I'm willing to do that, to do another live session in 2022. And I said, I'm still alive, whatever. So the point is this so you have a process that is repeatable and it worked. And the third thing I would say is this. I ask myself 3 questions. I take a half an hour every day. I take about 3 or 4 hours every week, and I take a day every month. The 3 questions I ask myself are simply this. What am I doing that's working? Okay. Second question, what am I doing that's not working? And my favorite question is what did I used to do that used to work that I'm no longer doing? My first book, Soft Sales, the only sales book in the world still to this day in 2021 that has sold over 1 million copies and is in 26 languages. I never got into bookstores with the book, and we had no internet. The way I sold my first 5 years, over 500,000 copies, I sent out 50 copies a month. to key. I looked up the name of the company, who was the president, and I sent him a copy of the book. Said I thought you might enjoy a copy of my new book, my first book. 3 weeks later, after doing this, John Roach, who was the president of Radio Shack, I love your book. I want 50,000 copies. So-and-so calls me and said, love your book. I sold 500,000 copies just by sending books out, autographed books to people with a little note that I thought, and I'm thinking, okay, when was the last time I did that? So I haven't done that since 1980. Well, but it worked then, maybe it'll work now. So, so it was, be willing to get rid of things that don't work, that you're attached to. I had a manual I developed. It was a manual probably 10 years ago. I looked at my storage area. I figured I haven't sold one of those manuals in 10 years. Why do I still have them on my website? This is stupid. Nobody's buying it. I threw them all away. You have to be willing to let go of the stuff that's not working and embrace things. So I would close with this line. There's a concept or a theory that says you got to think outside the box. The problem with thinking outside the box is this. If you have a problem or a challenge or a need and you think outside the box, and if it doesn't work, what are you going to do? You're going to jump back in the box to what's comfortable, what you know. So my philosophy is very simple. Don't think outside the box. Throw the box away. When you try something new, if it doesn't work, don't give yourself the ability to jump into something that you know doesn't work. Be willing to embrace. I'm not saying you let change drive you, but I'm saying you use it to help you develop on what you feel is a blending process of what the market wants, who you are, how you're going to present that. And so I would say basically you got to keep learning and learning from who. You got to learn from your competitors, you got to learn from your customers, and you got to learn from people, your prospects who you couldn't sell or didn't sell to. I do this all the time. I still do it today. And I think probably one of the things, I would go back to handwriting notes. I sent out an average of 5 handwritten notes every day. I had some postcards developed with a couple of my quotes. And every day I send out 5 to say, hey, thanks for your business, thanks for your relationship, thanks. And I would say, birthday cards. I used to send out 50, 60 birthday cards a month to clients. I stopped doing that because I could do it online. Guess what? People didn't thank me. So I've gone back to sending out real birthday cards, addressing it, putting a note in it, putting a stamp on it. I think we need to get back to, I'm not saying that you do that 100%, but a blending process of what's working with what the marketplace wants, I think is a recipe for success.
Yeah, that's a very powerful question. What was I doing that was working that I'm not doing now? Because it's so easy.
I say, how did technology, or how did the society, how did it influence me to change that? And because in other words, the technology industry convinced me, you don't have to sell these books out anymore. Send them an email. You don't have to send these books anywhere. Send them an e-blast. Send them this. I'm thinking, wait a minute. But I sold 1 million copies of a book doing it that way, and I haven't sold squat doing it this way. Maybe I should blend a little of this and a little of that. And that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I think the rarer the thing gets, the more value it has. Imagine everybody sending emails and they receive your copies in a mail, like a hard copy. It's got more value, right? Because like, wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wow.
I get 5 or 6 thank you notes a month now from people for that I sent them a birthday card, when I never got a thank you when I sent them a birthday message by an email. That's
yeah. and there's a difference in the value that you feel when you get a kiss, let's say, or a hug or a smile on WhatsApp or one of these technology sources, versus when you get a card, right, which just says thank you.
No, yeah. In fact, last year I sent my ex-girlfriend a text and I said, "Have a nice day." And she texted me back and said, "What did you mean by that?" I'm thinking, oh my God.
Some things don't change them. Yeah, some things don't change. So now to end this, where do we connect with you? Where can the audience reach you? I would be in touch with you for sure, and for the audience to know a little bit more about Tim. And also, which book can we pick up? The first book you would like to suggest?
Well, I don't have all my books on my website because nobody wants to go scroll through 80 books to find the one they want. So the process I'm using now is I put probably 8 or 10 of my favorites that I think are the most popular on my website. And then when someone purchases that, I send them a list, including the book, of all the other manuals and tapes and things that I have that are available. They can just go to my website, which is my name, Tim Connor, that's CONNOR.com. From a speaking perspective, There are a few countries that I will not go back to. I won't mention what they are that I have spoken in. There's some I would love to go back to, and there's some that I haven't been to that I would love to go to. All that information, if somebody's interested, I send them out a list of my most popular topics and my fees. But the bottom line is that I'm using my website only as a device to start the relationship with someone. So you have my phone number and you have my email address, which is timspeakforyou@gmail.com. But I do this. When I get an email from someone saying, hey, we'd like to talk to you about hiring you for a convention, I don't respond to that email. I pick up the phone and I call them. That's the way I do it.
Wow, great. And would India be on your list to come and speak?
As long as you're nice to me when I get there, yes.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think, yeah, it would be good. It would be good. It's a very welcoming country. It's got a huge mix of people, and it's coming up very nicely. It's
it's not on my bad list. It's because I've never been there, so I don't know. But one of the things I tell people, I have a simple rule with all my books. I don't like criticism, so if you don't like the book after read it, just throw it away. Don't give it to somebody else. It's okay. It won't hurt my feelings. But I also tell people that sooner or later, before you finish one of my books or I speak, you're going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. If you're not ready for that, then you probably should not buy the book. But if you are ready for some positive change, I'm not going to tell you how to change, but I'm going to give you the courage to know what to do when you should do it. And that's the difference, I think, between a lot of self-help people today and gurus and authors. I've seen them. I was a member of the National Speakers Association for 30 years. I listen to these people preach at me and tell me, this is the way you need to speak. This is the way you need to sell it. This is the way you need to promote it. And I'm thinking, but I'm not you, and the people who read my books are not me. And I don't have a right to tell you that as a speaker or as an author. I want to help you add another tool to your toolbox to help you become a better you. And that's my philosophy.
Yeah. And I think that's where we started, right? Where you said that I was not put on this planet to impress you.
That's right.
And that's true. Wow. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed this, Tim. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate the privilege and the honor. Thank you for having me.